Welcome to the Everyday Warrior podcast, where we talk free to break free. As someone who's been told they talk too much, can speak with a mouthful of marbles, and might just be able to sell ice to Eskimos, I have found the perfect space to speak my truth and dive into deep conversations. This podcast is about celebrating everyday warriors, the people who face life's challenges head on, breaking through obstacles to build resilience, strength, and courage. Join me, your host, Trudy Marie, as I sit down with inspiring individuals who have fought their own battles and emerged stronger, sharing raw, real, and authentic stories that make you laugh, cry, debate, wonder, intrigue, feel all the emotions, and get curious about life with. This is a safe space to explore, question, and find your own path to new possibilities. Let us all embrace the warrior within and realise that while no one is walking in your shoes, others are on the same path, journeying through life together. Love the Everyday Warriors podcast? You can support the show for as little as $5 with a one-time donation or by becoming a monthly subscriber. Your contribution helps me continue bringing you inspiring stories of everyday warriors who overcome challenges to find strength, resilience, and new possibilities in life. Head to the link to buy me a coffee and fuel the next episode. Every bit counts. Hello and welcome to another solo episode of the Everyday Warriors podcast. And I'm here today to give you part 2 of my time with WA Police. And today what I'm going to be talking about is my first location straight from the academy, which was, as we affectionately call it, the booze bus. And in fact, it's actually part of breath and drug operations, which is a part of traffic. Now, leaving the academy, everyone dreaded going to the booze bus. It was just one of those things that people thought that they were under the instruction of supervisors. They couldn't get out and deal with real criminals. They had to deal with traffic, and it just was not seen as one of those highly regarded places to go straight from the academy. Whereas I didn't care. I was like, just let me at it, see what I can learn, you know, what's in it for me. And I was just eager to get out there and do something regardless of what it was. So I started there were 4 buses at the time. I don't know how things run these days, but I was part of one of the buses and no one from my squad was on my bus. I was the only person from White Squad, and the rest of the probies on that bus were actually from my sister squad, which was the Red Squad. So I felt really alone, even more alone than I'd been at the academy, because I didn't really know anybody from that particular squad. Like the people on my bus, I had nothing to do with during my time at the academy. So one of the girls actually from Red Squad became a really good mentor for me. She was much younger. However, she had been a PAO, which is a police auxiliary officer, working in at the watch house, and she gave me so much insight into what she had experienced and what she had already seen. And when it came to things like searches and ways of dealing with people and how to address some of the people you were dealing with, like, she became a wealth of knowledge. And I was so grateful for her to actually take the time to teach me that and almost like take me under her wing. Even though I was an older person, she just really gave me and exposed me to some stuff that I would not have otherwise have known and would have taken me probably years to start to develop on my own. So she was awesome for that. But as I said, I knew I had lots to learn, especially the Road Traffic Act and the regulations, because while you're studying at the academy, this is kind of passed over as like a really brief introduction, because there is so much to learn and so much to know. Like, that's why traffic is such a separate division of WA Police, because there are so many other bits and pieces about the law that you have to know. So I found it really interesting to learn that aspect of the job. It was also my first real experience of dealing with drugs and drug paraphernalia. I was that good girl, completely innocent. I'd seen marijuana plants in my time, but I'd never actually seen like other drugs and other drug paraphernalia. I didn't even know what a bong looked like. And so, being at Breath and Drug, one of the good things that we had the opportunity of doing was actually going into the property storeroom and being shown, and they were actually doing a clear out, so destroying evidence that was no longer required. And they had this big container of product, like all these evidence bags that were going to be destroyed. And we were allowed to kind of sift through them and have a look and see what was in the bag, see the description on the bag, see what was inside the bag, compare it, and actually identify it. So for me, that was gold, because I was able then to go, oh, so that's what potentially meth looks like, or heroin looks like, or cocaine looks like, or a bong looks like, or, oh, that's a bong too, or, you know, whatever the case may be. Even to deal with like some of the meth stuff I had never seen before. So that was really cool. And then being able to apply that on the street, knowing what to look for. So within breath and drug operations, there are two parts to it. So most people would be very familiar with going through a booze bus stop or a random breath test stop, where you are required to blow into some kind of alcometer to give you a reading of the alcohol in your blood. And so that was kind of the easy part. Like, everyone was familiar with that. Most drivers were familiar with that. And I'd done them myself in the past, so it wasn't foreign to me. But when it came to doing random drug tests, we did two types. We did a targeted one if we presumed a car or a person looked under the influence when we were speaking with them. And then we also did completely random ones. Now, with that, you never knew what you were going to get. And quite often I was surprised when I would, you know, go to do a random test, stand there, talk to the driver, be totally cool, calm, collected, have a conversation with them while the test processed, only to turn out to have a positive test. And I'm standing there going, what the fuck? I never expected that. And it happened on so many occasions. And I can tell you that the people who really pissed me off the most were mothers with children in the car, especially during the day when their kids are at school and they potentially have a toddler in the back seat and they come up with a positive drug test. Like, it used to goad me, because I was just like, how can you do this? Like, it's just so irresponsible. But anyway, I became really good at being able to look for the signs, look for the paraphernalia, look at the potential hiding spaces of how drugs can be hidden within a vehicle, on a person, and what sort of things to look for. So that was one of the cool things to experience working on the booze bus. We also did a number of like trips around WA. So the general work was that you'd rock up to work every day and they would tell you, your supervisors, where you were going today. So where the bus was going to be parked. Now, sometimes we would park in the one location for the whole time. Other times we would do half a shift in one location, break for crib, and then a second location would be driven to for that time. And we'd have to set up the whole road safety, the lines, all the equipment required, so on and so forth. But on top of that, we would also do the occasional trip to smaller regional towns. So we would actually take the bus out for the whole day and drive in and around the Perth metropolitan area, but to some of the outlying towns that may not normally get that kind of thing. And because there's always the booze bus along with some additional vehicles, you had the opportunity of them being able to ride in those vehicles and, you know, do some traffic stops with speeding, do some traffic stops with random breath testing, random drug testing, things like that. So it gave you exposure to how things would actually be as you're driving around the Perth metropolitan area if you were in a station, but you just had the exposure, I suppose, on a lesser, busier place. We also were able to do 2 road trips during my time on the booze bus. The first one, we went down south and we were based in Busselton for a food festival that was on, I think, around the Margaret River region, but we were kind of based further north to capture those people going to and from the festival. And that was really cool because, it was a weekend away, you were working, you were in a different area, and that was kind of cool. The other one we did was going up to Geraldton for a local football match. I think it was the West Coast Eagles and the Dockers doing a pre-match, and we were able to go up there. And I really enjoyed that particular trip because I got to travel in one of those vehicles and do a run up Indian Ocean Drive. And that was my first time of actually being exposed to kind of a federal police style situation where a car we stopped was driven by and had people in it that had illegal visas and shouldn't have been in the country. And that was a whole process then to be able to hand that off to other officers to then hand off to the federal police to deal with. And I'd never come across anything like that before, really wouldn't have known what to look for in that situation. And it was my supervisor that obviously guided me through the whole process. So that was just another thing to go, cool, tick off the list, I've done that. The thing I loved about the booze bus too was the fact that it took me all over the city. There was never a boring day because you never knew where you were going to be working. And it could have been anywhere. I'm talking from the far north to the far south to the east in the hills to the inner city areas. It was just, almost like a lucky dip of where are we going today? And I always just found that interesting. It got me to know the city a little bit better. Areas that I was unfamiliar with, I became more familiar with. And you were just learning. You were learning about, how different people acted in different areas, different socioeconomic areas, what sort of reception you had. One thing that used to make me laugh, especially on a Friday afternoon, was the number of people that would, especially tradies, that would finish the afternoon, obviously have a few beers at work, and then get in the car and drive. Now, for most part, they would blow just slightly over the limit because the alcohol was still in their mouth. And they were like, oh, but I've just had 1 beer before I've left work. And I said, look, I totally get it. And we had rules around that they used to have to sit and wait and do a secondary test. And the secondary test, quite often they just blow under. But I used to say to them, it's fine to sit around at the end of the day and have beers after work. But what is your boss doing to behave responsibly to, 1, either offer a light beer or 2, offer food with that beer so that you aren't causing those sorts of situations where you are potentially putting yourself in danger because you're blowing over the limit. While you're at the booze bus, you are also able to complete a number of your tasks in your Proby book. So your Proby book was basically 10 tasks that had to be done 3 times, and there was a time limit between each one. So the quicker you could get them done, the quicker you could then get the second part and the third part done. So obviously being based within traffic, you focused on the traffic style task. So there was a breath and drug style task in there. So I was very fortunate enough that I could complete the 3 tasks, but because of those 3 tasks, they also related to other tasks. So one was to do a brief, one was to do a field report. So from the one job, you should have been able to tick off 2 or 3 tasks within that one job. So I left pretty much the booze bus after 6 months of having completed a number of those tasks because I saw through each one to the nth degree where I could and was able to tick off a lot of those jobs, even if it was only the first one, and then I could continue on at my next station with the second and third task. But I was really fortunate to be able to, I think, complete 3 full tasks out of so that was 6 tasks out of the 30. The one thing I did come across within the booze bus, and this is another sort of bullying or segmenting type situation, was when you were on crib break, especially if you're in the one place, you could either bring your crib with you, or if we were in a residential area, we could actually go out and buy lunch, dinner at the local takeaway, whatever was in the vicinity. For the most part, I actually took my lunch and took my crib every day. So when you'd eat on the bus, because that's where you were, you're out on location, so you just eat on the bus. So I started eating with the supervisors because most of the guys were my age or similar age to me. Most were married. Many had children even my kids' age. So I felt that during our breaks, I was able to, one, get to know them as human beings and not as supervisors. And two, we had something to talk about and relate to because we were parents of children and we had all the same sort of situations like, sleepless nights or, things that you had to do outside of work, all that kind of stuff. And this started to piss the other probies off from the other squad. Now, as I said, I already felt a bit isolated and lonely because I was the only person from white squad on my bus and all the rest were from red squad. So one, they had already had rapport with each other and built up relationships with each other. The supervisors obviously already knew each other on the bus and I was in the middle. And instead of going and sitting with the probies, because for most of them, they were all under 25 or around that age, they were all into partying on the weekends or going out after work. And I'm like, I just can't relate to that level of conversation. Like, that's not where I am at my life. But by sitting with the supervisors, they were on the same level as me dealing in life. Like, it's not like I was better or worse than them. It was just, I relate to these guys better. But the shit I used to cop, like I got accused of brown nosing and accused of not wanting to be like sitting with the probies because I felt like I was better than them and shit like that. And I'm like, are you guys for real? Like, we're all adults here. It's not like school where it's like, oh, it's us against the supervisors. Like, let's split here. It's like, go and talk to people who you are actually interested in communicating with and have something in common with. And right now, I don't have anything in common with you guys. You guys are talking about partying and where you're going to on the weekend. And I'm sitting here telling you what I'm going to cook tonight for dinner with my kids. Like, how does that work? I was also very good at administrative work, at making sure all my paperwork was correct, making sure that all the stats were recorded, and I was getting noticed within the office for that. So like I said, there were 4 buses. I would do a lot of the work, a lot of the additional work. I would help supervisors out where I can because I was so eager to learn and so eager to understand the processes. And everybody else was like, why? Why do you bother, Trudy? Like, it is what it is. But our senior sergeant, who was such a lovely man and so relatable, and I remember him meeting me in the car park one day, like we rocked up for shift together, and he kind of made a joke with me, and I was trying to like, why are you having this conversation, mate? And then I went, oh, what have I done? And what I'd realised is that when I had finished the shift the night before, I had cleared my firearm and I'd put away my magazines and my ammunition, but I hadn't actually put away my firearm. It was still in my holster, which got locked in my personal locker. And of course, when they did the nightly audit, they're like, we're missing a firearm. Whose firearm is it? Yep, that's Dwyer's. Go find it. Found it in my locker. That's a cake fine. Like, there was a thing called Cake Act and you got fine cake. So that one actually cost me more than a cake. It cost me a carton, but I never ever left my firearm in my holster ever again. I made sure every single night that it got locked up in the armory where it should have been. But he was so good about it. He could have been rude. He could have been very aggressive towards a simple mistake. And he was actually really genuine about it. And yeah, as I said, in my career, I never ever made that mistake again. During my time at Breath and Drug, I also had my first not guilty brief. And I remember this one in particular because it was an older woman who I locked up on drug charges. I arrested her, I should say, on drug charges. So it was a random stop, did the drug test on her. It came back positive. So as a result, we tipped the car. And what annoyed me is that she was of an older age, as a grandmother age. She had another passenger in the car of a similar age who was also with her granddaughter. And she had multiple charges in previously that had said that she was no longer authorised to drive. So I had to impound her car. And it was just a shit show of a job in the sense that I had to make sure that, you know, the passenger and the little girl got to a safe place and got like transport, that this woman was sorted out with all her charges and things like that. And anyway, she went not guilty. And I think the only reason she went not guilty is that traffic charges actually have a really heavy penalty and often have jail term penalties. And she knew that the next time she got caught, she would possibly do some jail time. And I think she went not guilty just to delay that process. But the paperwork you have to go through in a not guilty brief and the things that you have to make sure where all your T's are crossed and your I's are dotted and you've got all the evidence and you've got all the statements. And I was just like, oh my God, thank God I am actually okay with admin work, because that's a lot of paperwork to deal with. And you ask any cop out there and they will tell you that the worst part of the job is often the paperwork. So yeah, that was my first not guilty brief, which I had to experience. The second one I had to deal with was a charge that came back with no conviction. And I was just like, what the hell? Like, this should have been a straight out conviction, like guilty. What's the fine? What's the penalty? Like, what the hell happened? Like, why did this person get let off? Anyway, my supervisor looked it up for me because I didn't understand. I was just going through a certain part of like the system to find out about these charges. And he goes, the reason there was no conviction is because the person passed away before the court date. And I was like, oh, okay. And that really kind of hit me in the way that I could not have foreseen that this particular person, in the process of dealing with a traffic penalty, traffic charge on the day that I dealt with him, that he would not make his court date because he'd passed away. Like, that life in that moment just became so finite. Like, here I was stressing about, like, why did my charge not go through, and, you know, what did I do wrong? And I'd done nothing wrong. The person just was not able to attend court, and I will never forget that particular period either. So I ended up spending 6 months at the booze bus before I was transferred, which is about the normal time that a probationer will spend on the booze bus before they get transferred out and the next lot of probies come through. But it was such a great experience. I learned so much from my supervisors during that time, so much about drugs and drug paraphernalia that I could then take with me to my next location, traffic situations that I could take with me to the next location. And it was just a real positive start to my policing career and what I was exposed to in a really kind of, I suppose, safe way. Because let's be real, like, you're not dealing with, you know, hardened criminals in the process of committing a crime. You're dealing with people driving vehicles on the road. And I say that in a way that it's not a typically unsafe environment to be in. In a lot of cases, it was actually a lot of fun. Like, we had fun with those particular jobs and the particular locations. I did Christmas time during that period. I did New Year's. I think I even did Easter. But it was all just an interesting period and, yeah, a real great way to start my real life policing experience. Thank you for tuning in to the Everyday Warriors podcast. If you have an idea for a future episode or a story you'd like to share yourself, then please message me, as I am always up for real, raw, and authentic conversations with other everyday warriors. If you love what you are hearing, please be sure to subscribe and hear all the latest episodes, and spread word to your family, friends and colleagues so they can listen in too. If you are sharing on social media, please be sure to tag me at _Trudy_Marie_ so I can personally acknowledge you. I am always open to comment about how these episodes have resonated with you, the listener. It would also mean the world to me if you were to leave a 5-star review to ensure that the Everyday Warrior podcast is heard by more listeners around the world. And remember, lead with love as you live this one wild and precious life.